Hello, guys. I'm going to get kind of personal today to answer this question because I feel like there's so many people out there who've probably been hurt and been through bad relationships, and you're afraid that you're never going to be able to trust again. And sometimes you might think that you shouldn't ever trust again. So, this commenter asked me, how did I learn to trust? Because you guys see me in videos with my partner, Kevin, knowing that I was in a 24-year horrible relationship and that I found out that he'd had hundreds of affairs throughout our marriage. Um, so people wonder, like, how do you ever trust again? Jenny seems like she should be scarred. I'm going to answer that question for you today. First up, will you please subscribe, drop a couple comments, and help me grow this little channel? I have hundreds of thousands of followers on other platforms, but I'm trying to make YouTube my permanent home. And it would help me a lot if you could just interact with my videos and subscribe and watch. Also, because I'm growing over here, it's really important for me to hear from you. If you like something about just the actual ways that I'm doing videos and the content that I'm producing, the things that I'm talking about, will you please let me know? I've made adjustments and totally pivoted just based on listening to the feedback from you. So it's really important to me right now. And also just keep the life advice coming too, because it's great. It's super helpful. Oh, and I didn't tell you who I am. I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two, where I share my escape from my Mormon tradwife life and how I've rebuilt here on the other side. Today, let's dive into how I ever learned to trust again after being married to my monster ex and everything that he put me through. And honestly, like, this was one of the most heartbreaking, difficult things that I found. I thought after 24 years of marriage, when I finally escaped domestic violence and I was all alone living on the other side without Jake in my life, I thought, oh, good, now I'm going to be happy. Now I'm not going to have PTSD. Now I'm not going to have panic attacks all the time. And now I can have healthy, happy relationships with other people. I thought that the biggest challenge was just making sure that friends and my community around me, and especially as I was dating, that those men in my life were good guys. Like, if I'm with good guys, then everything's going to be great. I'm not going to have to worry about anything. I guess that my working hypothesis was Jake was a monster. So as long as I avoid Jake's, life is going to be good. And this is a lot of vulnerability here for me to share with you, but I think it's important because there's other people that go through it. You know that phrase, the grass is greener on the other side? What I found after leaving domestic violence was that unfortunately, the grass was in my head. And what I mean by that was the ways that Jake had traumatized and harmed me, which in some ways just repeated my traumatic childhood, left grass stains behind in my brain, and I was left with PTSD and often had trust issues and fear issues that other normal people wouldn't have had, even in healthy relationships. I'm going to be really vulnerable sharing some of these stories because I think it might help somebody out there just to know that, like, you're not alone. But I eventually would meet Kevin, and we would fall in love and start to blend our families. Also during the time period that I would become homeless, which was a disaster. Kevin has been such a kind, compassionate, caring, supportive partner through all of these ups and downs with me. I remember one day we were in a little rental house for just about a month and a half together. And we were in the kitchen together, just like cooking dinner for our kids. And Kevin reached for a pan above my head. And I physically covered my face and jumped. And he was like, "What was that?" That was Jake. That was what Jake did to me. Kevin and I, when we moved in together, put location trackers, share your iPhone type of stuff on each other's phones. And one day, Kevin told me that he was going to work and then coming back. And his tracker showed that he was in this Target parking lot for like an hour and a half. And I was at home physically packing my bags because I just knew that he was in that Target parking lot with a woman in his car. I just knew it. I was at home physically crying and like telling the kids, oh my God, it's over. Like, I can never trust another man. Like, I cannot believe, like, Kevin said he was going to be home an hour and a half ago. He's just been parked in that Target parking lot. I was considering driving over there. I was just thinking about what am I going to do? So finally, just out of pure anger and like having this meltdown, I FaceTimed him. And he was in Target with his two daughters that he had picked up from school. And he thought that he had texted me, but he hadn't. And they were school supply shopping. And they couldn't find like the pencils and the glue sticks and all the stuff that they needed. And I guess we hadn't been together for that long, so he didn't think about telling me that he was going to be home a little bit late. Honestly, in the early days of my relationship with Kevin, I was constantly drilling him on, he works at a school. He's with all women. And I would drill him on, like, what did the kindergarten teacher say to you? And The secretary seemed like she was smiling a little bit big when I was in there bringing you lunch. And it was hard, you guys. Recovering from the type of trauma that I went through, and if you guys have gone through that too, if you've ever been cheated on, you can get away from that person. But again, the grass stains till stay in your head until you manage to wash them out. I will say, just to give you hope, it's been 6 years since my divorce finalized. I've been with Kevin for 5 years, and I'm at such a beautiful place in our relationship that I never think about trust anymore. Like, it's not even a thing on my mind, although we do have some healthy habits around that, which keep me feeling safe and happy. So I want to share with you, since the question was, how did you learn to trust again? The things that I think really contributed to me learning how to trust again. Number one is access. My ex-husband never let me into his private life. I was not on his bank account. I actually didn't even have a bank account for most of our marriage. So I didn't see what his spending was. Never in our entire marriage did I ever have passwords to computers or cell phones. Looking back, huge red flag, but I didn't know any better. I got married when I was really young, and I would ask Jake, can I see your phone? And he would simply say no. I didn't have access to anything. I didn't have access to talking to the people in our business that he worked with. I was completely cut off. There was a wall around me, and that lack of access allowed him to cheat, and it kept me from knowing that he was cheating. So with Kevin, in the very beginning, we talked about I need full access to everything. So just 2 nights ago, we were just sitting at dinner, and I was like, do you mind if I just scroll through your phone for a minute? Phone check, not to be weird about that, but I do think that every couple should do this from time to time. So he hands me his phone, and I hand him my phone, and he doesn't care about my phone, but I just scroll through to see where he's been recently and if anybody's been texting him and things like that. And in 5 years, there's never been anything that gives me any alarm. I have access to looking at his separate bank account whenever I want to. And we have a combined account, so I see where all of his money is going. We also have trackers and stuff on each other's devices. We have Life 360 as a whole family, so I know how fast Kevin's driving home from work, and he knows what time I leave the house to run to Trader Joe's. Whenever I do videos about access, I get a lot of pushback from people saying, like, that just seems creepy and like you need your privacy. You are allowed to have privacy as long as you want, and that is called being single. If you're a bachelor, nobody has to ever touch your phone. You're a single lady, nobody ever has to get into your computer. But if I'm going to combine a life, possibly combine genetics and create a child, if we're combining any type of finances and we're now commingled as a couple, I need access to everything, period. The number 2 thing that's really helped me gain trust is that Kevin and I have always had very open conversations around anything that makes me feel unsafe. So after that day at Target, he learned to touch in with me. If he's leaving work, he'll shoot me a quick text. Hey, I'm leaving work. I'm going to go to Breakmasters. Here's when I anticipate being home. We're always touching in with one another, which I never got in my first relationship. And it just really, it's full transparency. I know where he's at. He's not trying to hide anything. I don't try to hide anything. And if anything ever does come up where I feel unsafe, like a new cute secretary starts working at the school, Kevin and I have very open conversations about those things. There's never been a time where he's like, I'm not going to talk about Secretary Jenny. This is stupid. He will sit down on the couch, look me in the eye, have the full conversation, tell me everything, give me the cell phone. And, usually it's like, Jenny, you think the secretary is cuter than I think she is? He's always open to the conversations. Number 3, trust is earned. Just the time that we've spent together and seeing that he hasn't betrayed my trust has done so much. Time with the right person, with these tools in place, will certainly do a lot to help you regrow your trust mechanisms. Number 4, therapy. I've actually been in therapy now for 7 years, weekly. I have really great poor people insurance that pays for mental health care. And you guys, honestly, I'm going to say this underlined exclamation point. I would not be able to be in relationships at all if I didn't have my therapist. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Therapy is absolutely everything. So I find myself in this amazing relationship with Kevin after also having some really good dating relationships and just developing better friendships and connections to people than I ever had in my entire life. But I was constantly triggered going into PTSD panic attacks and always just still being unhappy in my relationships. So it was really discouraging because if you've had things that have broken your trust, that have broken you, it can be hard for you to feel good being around people. What my therapist has done is really 2-part. First of all, she's helped me heal from the trauma. She has gone in and helped me process things. I don't do EMDR therapy or anything like that. It was never really effective for me. We just talk about things, reframe, go through, and through that processing, I have healed emotionally so much that I'm not always just like totally panicking out and constantly experiencing PTSD, although it is part of my life much more than you could ever see on camera. And then she also helps me just learn how to deal with things that come up in relationships in healthy ways. I jokingly tell her all the time that she's raising me, like, okay, you're raising Jenny, because I wasn't really parented. I was taught a million different dysfunctional, verging on toxic, verging on just outright abusive, horrible habits. And I didn't know how normal people were supposed to act. So my therapist helps actually coach me in working with things that do come up in my day-to-day life. Lastly, and this might be the most important thing of all, I don't trust Kevin. I trust myself. And let me tell you what I mean by that. In my first relationship, there were a million times when I kind of looked the other way because probably I didn't want to know the truth because I was financially dependent. I was completely stuck with Jake and I didn't want to have to go through a divorce, break up my kids. I didn't think that I could survive on the other side. When my marriage of 24 years came to an end, I tried to unalive myself. I was so devastated. I didn't think that I could ever have a life without Jake. I've learned now that I survived all of that and got through to the other side. And not only was it okay, in many ways, my life is a million times better than it ever was before. So here I had all this loss aversion that was keeping me stuck to this monster, as well as religious beliefs that made me think that I couldn't divorce him without going to hell. So it wasn't all my fault. But there were a lot of things within me that made me not want to leave that marriage because I felt like my life was over. My life wasn't over. That's why I'm called Life Take Two, because it didn't in fact end. What I learned from that is the message that I hope, if there's nothing else that you get from me, that you get this. Life can be okay on the other side of tragedy. Life can be amazing on the other side of trauma. Life can be okay. Whatever you're going through right now, it might be different on the other side, but you may think that you're going to be crying and depressed and your life is going to be rotten forever. A month from now, a year from now, you might be standing in the sunshine with a smile on your face, thinking this is better than it's ever been before. And that knowledge that I got through these horrible things, so I have the capacity to navigate and get through some next horrible thing, is actually what creates my sense of trust. I trust that should Kevin step totally out of character and do something that does harm me, I will be heartbroken, but my heart will heal and I will be fine on the other side of that. Should something happen to any of my friends, any of my children, the people in my life, yes, my heart will break, but my heart healed one time, it will heal again. And I trust that Jenny has the capacity to move through things and keep on going. In a way, it's a little bit of an understatement that I call myself Life Take Two because I have had 5 brushes with death. And one of those wasn't a brush. I actually passed away. I was septic. I had a tumor. I had a near-death experience. I was not alive for a couple of minutes. And what I've learned from that is that I can do hard things and I can survive things. And maybe one of these times I won't survive. And not that life always stays the same. Things change and certainly loss is something hard to cope with. But in many ways, after losing everything and then like multiple losses over years and years, I've kind of learned to look for the silver lining and like for the pot of gold on the other side. Sorry, I just mixed 2 precious metals there in 2 separate allegories, but I think that they both go together. I know that when everything falls apart, somewhere there's a gift in that. And that keeps me going. I love Kevin with all of my heart. I love our family. I hope that we have a long, amazing life together and that we die in each other's arms in the nursing home at like age 102. But if my future happiness depended on a man that I cannot control being faithful to me or doing other things that, again, I can't control, that would be a recipe for depression and sadness and for a complete lack of trust. So I just can't do that. I hope this helps somebody. And now I'd love to hear from you. Have you gone through heartbreak in your life where you lost trust? And were you able to rebuild trust on the other side? If so, what were your secrets? I'll be hanging out in the comments. Thanks, guys.